It seems to me that on the second Sunday of Christmas, that's what this is, that sometimes it's hard to cast our gaze back, even though it's only 11 days in the past, to cast our gaze back to Christmas Eve and day and the nice joy, the candlelit silent night, holy night, and a manger and a baby in the joy. And from today, from January 4th, from this day, it almost seems like we need binoculars to look through the headlines in the world and where we are to look back to Christmas. And do I have some company here? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We don't always have a second Sunday of Christmas, the season of Christmastide being 12 days. There are years where we only have one Sunday of Christmas. This isn't one. It always seems to make it even seem longer. My favorite Christmas song is "O Holy Night," in French, Le Cantique de Noël. It is based on a poem written in France in 1847 and set to music by Adolphe Charles Adams. You may or may not know this. The poet was a wine merchant and a known atheist. The composer was Jewish. They were both friends of the local parish priest. And for whatever reason, the priest asked his friend, the wine merchant, to write a poem based on the Gospel of Luke. And it turned out to be a pretty good poem, and so he asked his other friend to set it to music. It was first sung at a Christmas Mass that same year, 1847, and the people loved to sing it. I do too. Maybe you do too. A thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices. We live in a weary world, don't we? Think about that on this Sunday of Christmas, this second Sunday, because that's what I hear right now. I hear our weary world, and I hear that thrill of hope. And this season of Christmas is our season of resounding and everlasting joy. The most familiar part of our hymnal, we love to sing this, even though there's some pretty spurious theology woven throughout of all of the Christmas hymns. I don't need to go into that today. My favorite is "Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see," like he's Superman. He's not. He's Jesus. The story in the Gospel of Matthew of the birth of Jesus that we read today is after the wise men leave. We'll observe that on Tuesday evening with Evensong and Epiphany. It is a terrifying story. It is all fear and risk for that baby that just got born. An angel appears to Joseph and warns him that Herod seeks to kill him. Herod fears for his own power and might. Like every leader that leads with violence and impetuousness, and Herod enacts terrible violence on the innocent. We skip those verses for this portion in the Sunday lectionary to keep his grasp on power. In our weary world, we have to acknowledge that it is always children that bear the brunt of violence and power and the seeking of it in our world. When powerful people use violence for their will. I don't think I need to tell you again that we are in a weary world this morning. And as we look back through the past few days, we have to open that veil to look back at Christmas. But we will. Twice in the gospel, it says this happened, such and such a thing happened, the running away, the fleeing for their lives, or just the life of Jesus, fleeing to Egypt and then returning. Twice it says this was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophets, and that the purpose of that, it is always in the Gospel of Matthew, the purpose of that is to remind us of the deep-seatedness of our hope. The hope that we hear in Jeremiah, that God will gather up people, that God will gather up the sufferers, the vulnerable, those with child, those who are children, that God will gather them up, and they will be led to a place like a watered garden. As I look on our parched, windy land, even that today for us right here and right now sounds beautiful and good. There is comfort, there is gladness, there is food. That is our hope, the hope of the prophets. A thrill of hope. So shortly after O Holy Night was first sung in the church in France in 1847, the church authorities learned of it, and they learned about its provenance, that the text was written by an atheist and the music was composed by someone who was Jewish, and they banned it in the church's not infinite wisdom. Although there are many who like to still remind me that it doesn't end up in our hymnal, so there must be something wrong with it. People loved it and still sang it. In the 1860s, not that long after, 12 years after, an American abolitionist learned of this hymn. Perhaps he traveled to France. And he wrote another verse or tweaked the words. Truly, he taught us to love one another. His law is love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother. And in his name all oppression shall cease. Mighty good words for today. And then I love this part. In 1906, a few decades later, on Christmas Eve, a telegraph operator was experimenting. This was a telegraph ... was experimenting with a microphone. And his shift was on Christmas Eve, and he decided to end his shift by reading the Gospel of Luke with his innovation, with his experiment. And then he picked up his violin and played the Cantique de Noël, O Holy Night. And lo and behold, ships nearby picked it up. It was the world's first radio broadcast. Can you believe it? A thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices. And so today our invitation is this. If you are like me and we have to work to look back at that joy of the Christ child, let us not lose hope. Let us not lose that deep and abiding hope of the prophets, the hope that we hear about in Ephesians, that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, the glorious inheritance of the saints. May we not lose hope that oppression and violence will someday cease. May we not lose hope for a world where we see each other truly as brothers and sisters and siblings worthy of all dignity. May we not lose hope that everything we do, when we act with deliberate attentiveness to God, and that God came among us in human form to teach us how to love. That all we do when we live with deliberate attentiveness to God matters for good, and that hope that is real helps us move past and through the sins of every age and history, those we know and those we do not know yet. Those lower horizons of what we longed for and hoped for and yet did not know what was right. The thrill of hope, a weary world rejoices. I had a friend, and when she was pregnant for the first time, she describes her shock, her complete and utter shock, that the world carried on around her. Like there were still wars and rumors of wars, and traffic lights were red, and people at the office were rude, and the grocery store was missing something. She says that's what our life in Christmas is like. Within each of us, we harbor this new life of the Christ child, this life of hope, this life of abiding hope, and the world rages on around us. And our job, our work, is to nurture that hope and to see it through the fog. A thrill of hope. A weary world rejoices. Amen.